All right, our next presentation is Applied Mythology for Space Evolution. And it's my pleasure to present Pamela J. Smith.
You have the PowerPoint, but I also brought handouts just in case the tech didn't work. So, oh, thank you very much. And if any of you want to receive the PowerPoint, just email me and we'll get it out to you the first week. So, a couple of months ago, the Mars Society accepted a paper that I wrote called The First Gods of Mars. And you can find it in the official library. And it talks about how, as human beings, one of the things we naturally do is to deify things and ideas, people, situations, natural processes. And so it's only reasonable to expect that we're going to do the same to the people who first go to Mars. They're going to be the first people. So anyway, that paper goes into the process of how we create gods and how, gosh, here's our opportunity to do it consciously and to let those first people then become the new heroes. So just as a quick way of introduction, like, well, what are you doing talking about this kind of stuff? I will say I'm a mythologist and have 35 plus years in the film industry, all aspects of it, Hollywood, around the world. It's been fantastic. Our company spent 10 years doing outside media for Boeing and Hughes, so I have a lot of experience in aerospace and that application of science in that direction, and have presented this concept that you're going to get today to a wide range of individuals and organizations, from actors, directors, writers, to the U.S. Army. I was on a think tank out of Fort Knox for 10 years, and we talked a lot about mythology, the warrior path, communications, and team building, which is mainly what this talk is going to be about. How can you build the best team using archetypes, or 5 main ArchePaths? And then other organizations, medical company, etc. So the information is really valuable for any of us. Have any of you done the Myers-Briggs test? Okay. And then there's the Enneagrams and Jung's archetypes. So we keep coming up with these really workable, because they seem to be based on empirical evidence, systems to help us understand ourselves and each other, and to put together teams, and to improve our group dynamics. And that's what this system about the ArchePaths is. And I first came across this when I was studying the physics of metaphysics, which included group dynamics, and the chakras, and all kinds of metaphysical stuff, a lot of which is also physiological and psychological, etc. When I'm lecturing about the chakras, I often say, now, if I'd been able to bring the cadaver with me, I'd lay it out right here and cut down along the spine and show you where the chakras are, and then pull up the endocrine glands that create those feelings that we have. So a lot of this stuff that used to be woo-woo just kind of isn't anymore, because we've now got the science that proves how it all works. So what we're going to look at today is the 5 ArchePaths of the warrior, the scientist, the magician, clergy, and the lover, and how you can use these to great personal effect by figuring out, golly, which path am I on right now? What's my main path and what's my sub-path? And then for people who are undergoing personal changes and want to get a more conscious grip on their own selves, it's a really good way to say, okay, well, what's coming next? And before we even start, I would suggest you try this. Maybe just one day a week, or maybe for a whole week, take one of these paths and act as if you're on it, and see what happens. And my brief version of the story of that is, when we were studying the warrior path, I went to a dinner at the Biltmore Hotel here in downtown LA with Maggie Thatcher, former Prime Minister. Well, me and 300 other people. So, you know, formal, hair's all curly, foo-foo dress, high heels, but I was on the inside thinking, warrior, yes. So my date was on crutches, and this bellhop said, oh, let me take you to an elevator, it'd be easy for you to get up there. Okay, thanks. So he did, and as the doors were shutting, he turned to my date and he said, will you be careful now? And he turned to me and he said, good evening, sir. And the doors shut, and my date turned and said, wow, that stuff works. And it does. Try it. Just try a day being on the warrior path. On your handouts, I'll tell you, like, you know, clothes and attitude and posture. And when I do this for actors, it's a lot of fun because we act it all out. And then, you know, another day, be the scientist. And don't necessarily tell anybody what you're doing, but see what kind of reactions you get. So, now, under the ArchePaths can come any of the archetypes. So you can have a mother warrior, a mother on the scientist path, a mother on the lover path, etc. So any archetype can fit under any of the ArchePaths. And the path is an approach to life. It's a way you react to life. Okay. So the 5 paths are the warrior, and there's a P word for each one. Power. The scientist is precision. Any of you who are scientists know you got to have everything exactly right or it's not going to work. Whether it's coding and you've got one little colon off, that's it. The magician is about performance. This is where you find a lot of your artists, your creators, and entertainers, but also people who look at something and say, I wonder what else we could do with that. The magician path is about vision, imagination. The clergy is about purity, and it's also about, as you'll see more, compassion. So you could even have, somebody doesn't have to be in holy orders, but if they've decided to clean up their self, and they're going to go on a cleanse, a detox, they're going to start going to the gym every day, that's a kind of clergy approach because it's about purification. It's about a focus that comes in first and then goes up. And the lover path is about, as you might expect, passion. So now let's look at the warrior in more detail. Now, we're talking about creating heroes. We're talking about a new world, as many of these speakers have already been talking about. How can we impress our ideals into practical situations that we're going to find? Well, first you have to figure out what are the ideals. So if we go back and look at the ancient missions, the ancient definitions of these particular paths, we see for the warrior, protect and defend the weak and the innocent, not the lazy and the stupid, but the weak and the innocent. And note that the knight is carrying the baby into the future, and the child is looking back at us as though to say, come with me into the future. Uphold and promote the good, the true, and the beautiful. And this is really important, but it's gotten distorted a lot these days. Assess, draw, and hold the appropriate boundaries. Really important, particularly in personal relationships and often professional relationships as well. The warrior desires, of course, power and victory. Now, when we go over these, and you've got them in your handouts too, remember that all this stuff, like everything, is on a spectrum. And if any of you are writers or do anything in the creative fields, you can play a lot with taking characters from one extreme to another, and then they get redeemed and come back or whatever. Or just keep that in mind as you're watching media, reading novels. And the fears are things when we're selecting people we need to watch out for. So in the psychological tests that are used to select the teams that are going to go out and colonize, you need to find out what they're afraid of too, right? Because you certainly don't want somebody who's claustrophobic or has vertigo trying to go somewhere like that in the way you have to go. strengths, the weaknesses. There was talk in this morning's sessions about the extreme cost of government projects versus private industry projects, and sometimes with a difference of 5 times, 10 times the cost, a lot of which is because of bureaucracy. And we have to do it this way, and it has to be this, and then that, and there's all these other people involved, as opposed to the singularity that can happen with private industry. Now, each of these paths has 3 levels. Just like an initiatory system such as masonry, or think of grade school, middle school, high school, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD. We tend to want to put ourselves through steps of initiation in order to show that we have earned, that we deserve that next step. So each of the paths has the 3 steps, and the lowest one, basically you're not thinking much, you're following orders, but you're learning. The middle step is where most of the people will be, and that is the path of the warrior who is active, who is trained, and who has a pretty wide field of influence on others around them. And then the regent is the commander-in-chief, it's the queen, it's the general of the Pacific Command, whatever, that very highest, and they are in charge of and affect everybody. So we'll talk a little bit later about who gets to be in control when, ideally, and of course it shifts all the time. Scientists, I was so interested when we were studying the science path because, of course, you have to find the truth or the science isn't going to work, right? That's why there's a whole category called pseudoscience. And if you're not familiar yet with the Skeptic Society, I'm sure, do check it out. They do some wonderful talks and experiments and presentations on pseudoscience, and he engages in some, I think, very erudite debates with people who have been promulgating those ideas. Staying curious and open-minded. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, look at how many things in this room were made because somebody said, I wonder if we could. So the scientist's path is always about looking for new things and teaching others how to think, not what to think. And not just the scientific method, but extrapolation of ideas, going beyond the boundaries, being taught how to think is vitally important. And we need a whole lot more of that these days, I think, starting at this big, all the way up. So, the scientists, again, their desires perfect knowledge, understanding the big picture, right? Unified field theory, string theory. Fears, and this is, I think, really important when you're starting to talk about sending people up in small, confined vessels on a long trip to a place where they're going to meet a lot of hardships. Don't be sloppy. Don't be overly emotional. You don't want people flipping out, etc. The scientists, and given that most of the people who are going to be going on these missions are probably going to be scientists anyway, for the most part, that will be their main ArchePath, and then there'll be the scientist warrior, the scientist lover, the scientist clergy, etc. Because each of us is operating at any point in time on one particular path with another one as an adjective, an adverb, we might say. And you have to be careful too in these kinds of ICE situations where you don't have a whole lot of choice where you can go and who you can be around. You need to watch out for people that are too insular. You need to have some ability to interact. And knowing that on the scientist path, that is a tendency. You would want to watch out for that. The levels of the scientist, I was so thrilled when I first learned this. The student who says, I'm curious, I want to learn, right? We're on a campus full of people who are wanting to learn. And then the actual scientist, but the highest level of that path is the philosopher. And whether it's Carl Sagan or Neil deGrasse Tyson or on, these people who have risen above just the facts to say, all right, what is the big picture that the facts are out picturing? So if you can get a group of your scientists that are touching upon or at this philosopher level, you're probably going to discover a whole lot more things out there. And you're going to be able to implement a lot of the suggestions that we've been hearing even today so far on how to make a better world, because they're going to have that bigger picture. So look for the philosophers when you're choosing your team in the scientist area. The magician is always looking for connection and control. They're also about conscious creativity. I have a little nephew, 15, he's not little anymore, who does card tricks and magic tricks, and he's really into it. And he plays Magic the Gathering and all of this. And it's about wanting to control in the games the forces of the seen and the unseen world. And I'm always reminded when I talk about the warrior path, the magician path, about any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Okay, obviously part. And it's true. And what happens here looks like magic to people who don't understand it. Like, Lee helped me set this up. I'm glad you pushed those buttons, because to me that's magic. But for you, just science, I guess. But thank you. Conscious creativity. There is actually an organization here called the Center for Conscious Creativity, and they operate out of the Vortex Dome down at the LA studios, and they have a number of presentations, state-of-the-art. The Vortex Dome does wonderful 360 work, and they work with a lot of science projects as well as creative. So check out the Vortex Dome and Center for Conscious Creativity. They're doing a lot of really cutting-edge work in VR and AR, and the melding of science and philosophy and exploration. The magician. Okay, now most of the other pictures in here are mythical stuff, but all right. Seriously, Doctor Who? Yeah, definitely on the magician path. It's about transformation. It's about building a heaven on earth. So you get into that idealism again that just in the last half hour was expressed. And once again, we don't want messiness. You know, you got to be accurate in all these things you're doing. Or remember in Fantasia where Mickey Mouse plays the sorcerer's apprentice to do Ka's musical piece of the same thing. And if you don't do the magic right, a lot of things can go really wrong. And the magician can also be very arrogant because they know better, because they know more, because they can trick you, they can fool you. So something to kind of watch out for in your team selection. Somebody who's a little too slick. Just on the dark side, a lot of times sociopaths and psychopaths, we are told, are very, very good at deception, the dark side of the magician path. Okay, the levels here are the apprentice, like your Mickey Mouse, somebody just learning the tricks, and then the magician, and then the grand magus. And this is an image of the Oracle of Delphi from ancient Greece, where that priestess was getting visions. Well, she was sitting on top of a chemical fume that was probably psychedelic, now thinking. So that high touch. The clergy is about release from the bonds of matter. It's about that purification, being definitely focused, and also offering comfort and inspiration to others. So if you've got someone, it's like Deanna Troi in Star Trek Next Generation. Okay, she was a lover and clergy. Okay, and it was about bringing people to the light, comforting them, and helping them to become better. The main thing to me about the clergy path to watch out for is fanaticism. You see more in the headlines. So you get people too dedicated to an ideal, you're going to have problems. And then there again, the ship loses distance. Lover, total union, compassion. It goes back to that one life concept from the last presentation, and connecting with other individuals. There's a problem on the lover path, and that's that sometimes people can be a little bit sensitive. And if they feel thwarted, then they can become resentful and obstructive. So you really want to, in your team building, watch out for somebody who's overly sensitive and who takes everything personally. Because then you could get stalkers and the levels there are the fan, the admirer, someone who's actually in a relationship. And then at the highest level, it's your deities of compassion. It's Krishna, it's Kuan Yin, it's the Virgin Mary, it's Jesus, it's the people who, Buddha, are all about love for all. So team selection, try to get at least one from the highest or second level. Get people who are synthesized if you can, not just emotional or mental, but have a synthesis of the path. And a wide spread of your subsidiary paths. So you've got scientists, scientist, warrior, etc. So you've got a nice mix there. And now structuring your hierarchies within each department, and certainly you see this on a film set, somebody needs to be in control of each department. But within those and then across the board, you get a lot of cross-fertilization, but ultimately somebody has to make the final decision, whether it's in the lighting department or the director, sound, whatever. And promote people's exploration of the other paths, because exploring these paths is a way to transformation and enlightenment. We're told to spend a little time on each path, or a lot, or touch base with ones you already know. And the goal is to become synthesized so you can use any of them whenever it's appropriate. So we put together a Martian Creed. We are Martians. We retain and maintain idealism, curiosity, adventure, and community. We defy and detach from tribalism, fear, hate, and despair. We honor the visionaries, the artists, the builders, the connectors. We dismiss the demagogues, the closed-minded, the controllers, the violent. We envision a world where every individual's potential is supported and encouraged, where we have and act with respect toward ourselves, each other, the environment, and the future. We are Martians. And I've already, in just the first 3/4 of the first day, have heard so many people addressing these same things. It's great to sense that, pretty much all of the same mind from different perspectives. And then here, if you would like to have us email you the PowerPoint, just email me and let me know. And if you want to get our monthly newsletter that covers all kinds of things, like this to books to movies to whatever, just thought-provoking ideas, hopefully, sign up on our website. And do any of you have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I do. I love thinking about human personalities and strengths in this kind of way, like you mentioned some of the other structures, Enneagram. My question was, in going through the 5, it struck me that the clergy and the lover actually seemed a little closer to one another than the others, and I was just wondering if that was something you agree with, or how you might distinguish them a little better.
You could distinguish them by the fact that the clergy desires, in order to accomplish their goals, to be alone. It's about purity, solitude, internalizing things. The lover path is about connection. And remember the P words, purity versus passion. Not that passion is impure, but it's that the clergy is going like this. On the clergy path, it's pulling in, and then eventually reaching out to serve. But on the lover path, it's about reaching out and connecting. Does that make that more clear?
This morning, there was a discussion of the Arch Mission Foundation, Do you remember
Yes.
that? Did you know that?
Yeah.
And the fellow was having to do with yoga. He was talking about that they were in the process of creating a myth.
Uh-huh.
Are you
Yes.
involved in that at all? Did they? I just thought you'd be a perfect person to discuss that further.
I'm definitely going to reach out to him.
Okay, well, I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
and,
because
we were
what you were just
talking-
saying that everybody was talking about this on some level,
Uh-huh.
and there he was talking about creating a myth or legend.
Well, yes, yes. And I was speaking with another one of our speakers just in the hall before now, and we were talking about how particular countries need new myths, particularly.
You mess it.
And
You
definitely
mess it.
America needs a new mythology. Oh, goodness. But that's what we're all about here, is creating the new mythology, the new ideals. So thank you all very much, and if you have any questions, feel free to come.